love about Naval the most is he has this uncanny ability to see through noise and just pierce it with insight. And so I wanted to invite Naval up and just get his thoughts generally on what we're doing as a community, his observations on how we're doing, what we're doing. So Naval, thank you very much for being here with me.
Thanks for having me.
So so give a hand for Naval.
Thanks everyone.
Yeah, Naval really fun.
So we've had a discussion in the community today that we think that a new time, a new era of being human is here. There's a lot of things changing. How do you assess this moment right now?
Definitely we're in the steep part of the curve, right? The acceleration. It's very unevenly distributed, but for example, I came here in a Waymo, so I was driven here by a robot. Where obviously, Elon's launching and landing rockets. We have supercomputers in our pockets. We have VR and AR worlds that we can live in. As you know, in bio and longevity, there's actually not that much that's happened. Medicine's been kind of frozen. Human lifespan is not really increasing outside of improvements in infant mortality or sanitation, like in certain countries. So there definitely does feel like we're living in the future and things are accelerating and a lot of progress is possible, but a lot of it is also held back. So some parts of the economy, some parts of technology are accelerating. AI, I didn't even mention that. But a lot of it is just standing still or even stagnating. Like, if you're trying to get across the world in an airline, it takes longer. You want to buy a house, even inflation adjusted dollars, it costs more. So a lot of things are sliding backwards, and people are generally not getting healthier with some bright spot exceptions here and there.
What do you think that people in this room would benefit the most by working on to unleash the greatest speed of progress?
You mean their own progress in life, or just in general?
Yeah, let's just say if we're looking at anti-aging, of health and wellness.
Anti-aging, well, health and wellness. Well, I think there's a lot of snake oil out there, a ton.
Wait a second.
No kidding.
I think the majority of what goes on in the health and wellness space is snake oil. And so I think it's very important to develop your own radar for what works and what doesn't. And it's important also not to just fall into the latest studies or data, because a lot of that stuff can be manipulated. And if you look at studies, really, a lot of these studies that especially the ones that journalists like to print, are based on very small sample sizes. It's self-reported. They're not double-blind. They're not randomized control. So there's just not a lot of data to go on. And we have somehow managed to absorb these modern mindsets and certain things that just make no sense. For example, from evolutionary theory. Evolution is a very good theory. It's the best explanation we have for how we as humans got here. And there's lots of theories that go out there that violate evolution. Like one, I'll give simple examples. Like one is you can still find most child raising, they'll say, give formula, not formula's fine. It's a good substitute for breast milk. Or cow milk is worse than formula. Formula is a modern invention. It was invented in the last 100 years. Factory-made product with lots of garbage in it. So I would just say you have to figure out what is true for yourself. And the way you do that is first you have good underlying scientific theories that have withstood the test of time. So, if you're in physics, you're looking at the atomic structure of nature, you're looking at quantum physics is our best theory in physics. In biology, evolution is our best theory, and there's a lot of details in evolutionary biology because people like to just make up evolutionary biology also, so understanding that I think is good. And then you want to try things, you want to test things, you want to see what has withstood the test of time. Starts with maybe guinea pigs that you trust, N of 1. For example, there's that joke that goes on Twitter where they show all the health ministers in Europe who are like this large, and obviously are very unhealthy people, and they're giving you health advice. You can't take it for the government. The FDA food pyramid has probably been upside down for the last 60 years. Literally, if you just ate in reverse order what they listed, you would do better than the order in which they listed. A lot of anything in in a package or a can or in the frozen section that has health food stamped on is probably garbage. The artificial sugars are just poison to your body. That's why it rejects them. That's why they pass right through, because your body's like, I don't know what the heck this is. So I think you have to have good explanations, and then on top of that, you have to verify it for yourself. So you have to use yourself as a guinea pig, use other like-minded people in the community as guinea pigs, and hopefully between all of us, we can figure it out.
What do you think we could do as a community, the most powerful things we could band together on to make more systematic progress?
It's a good questions. I think the basics are really important, and so the basics are just diet and nutrition. That's the fundamental baseline of everything. So if you have to take vitamin supplements, you're already doing something wrong probably. So first, just make sure you have access to high quality, non-poisonous, natural, healthy food as your base for your meal. If your grandparents wouldn't recognize it as food, then you probably shouldn't be eating it either. If it's lasting at room temperature on the shelf for long periods of time, then bacteria aren't eating it. If bacteria aren't eating it, then why are you eating it? So I think there's some basic stuff on food supply, food availability, and food quality. Then the second after that is exercise. And here I think people get really complicated. The best advice I heard on this was just, it almost doesn't matter what you do, just do something every day. So just work out every single day. Obviously strength training, but people get into all these crazy details, right? Like there are people who are like, well, I'm only going to eat pasture-raised, grass-fed, carbon neutral, cruelty-free, blah blah blah. But then the reality is they're eating Twinkies or Oreos because they got hungry. So I think if you just nail the basics, that's probably 80% of it. And then there is real interesting stuff happening in biohacking. There's stuff with peptides. You've all heard of Ozempic. There's insulin is a peptide that's working pretty well. There's stuff like follistatin, which I think, Bryan, you've talked about in the past. So there's up and coming stuff. I do think that the regulatory state doesn't like these things. It doesn't fit into their model of like $3 billion in an FDA-approved trial over 10 years. So we need to figure out how to get past that so we can have real anti-aging therapies. Stem cells and exosomes, there's stuff coming up there. 98% snake oil. So it's going to be pretty hard to sort out what's real and what's not. I think what we almost need is, and I've mentioned this to Bryan before, and I think this is part of what Don't Die is doing, is almost a private FDA that's run sensibly. Like for example, when you go to buy a car or a computer, you don't read reviews from the government. There's not a government rating agency that has to approve the cars or the computers. I mean, they do for crash records and all that, but not overall in terms of quality. Yet when it comes to biology, medicine, and supplementation, everything that we take that's bioactive in our bodies goes to the FDA, and they just veto most of it. And it would be better that each person could decide based on their own circumstances, whether they're sick or they're old or young or how strong they're feeling, that they would be allowed to do some degree of experimentation, and we could rely upon a private FDA, starting with guinea pig number 1, and then rolling down from there.
And so parting advice, if we are looking at our moment in time as a species from the biggest possible time scale, let's just say, from hundreds of years into the future, if they could whisper something into our ears, if they could share wisdom, what do you think they would say to us?
I mean, I think you want me to say don't die.
Yeah.
What should they actually say? I think if you stay optimistic and high agency, that's probably the best way to do things, which is optimistic I actually have a very specific definition of how you should be optimistic. You should be optimistic in the general, but you should be skeptical in the specific. So for example, if someone comes and offers you a specific solution or a specific therapy, most of the time it's not true. Most new things are false, but a few are. So you should stay optimistic that you can find something in there that will work and that will be true and that could extend your lifespan or make you smarter or make you wealthier or make you fitter or whatever it is that you want. But you should be skeptical of every specific proposal. So I would say generally stay optimistic in the general, even if you are skeptical in the specific. And then you want to be a high agency person. High agency means that you figure things out for yourself and you solve problems for yourself. Just keep moving, keep moving. Life is lived in movement. And the more you move, even if you're wrong, as long as you keep trying enough cycles, enough iterations, you get to the right answer.
Great.
Cool. Naval, thank you very much.